I'm joined today by DrKatBuilds. Hello, Kat.
Hello.
Welcome to the stream. How are you? How's everything going right now?
It's good. I'm in the middle of a 5-day weekend, which is awesome because that's just how my work schedule ended up this week. So
Oh,
I'm having an extended weekend, which has been great.
that's great. You know, they talk about having a shorter work week, and I work a normal 40-hour job, and sometimes I dream about what would it be like to have regular 3-day weekends, and I just think it'd be amazing. Like even 3 days, I'd feel so much better about. I think rest and getting more time, and still, I feel like it
Hmm.
wouldn't impact my productivity in a negative way.
Yeah, I switched to 410s at the start of the year.
Hmm.
It's been some getting used to, but having that consistent 3-day weekend has been amazing.
Yeah.
Especially now I had a student physical therapist at the start of the year as well. So she switched to another clinical instructor. And so now like my work days are not quite as stressful. I love teaching, but it does add a lot of extra to your day.
Right.
Um, and now that I'm just like, oh, I have a 3-day weekend. This is pretty sweet. And with working in a hospital, we're very flexible with changing days around. So that's kind of how I got the 5-day weekend. So I worked last normally I work Tuesday through Friday, but this past week I worked Monday through Wednesday. So I had Tuesday, Thursday off, have my normal weekend, have my Monday off. So I'll be back Tuesday through Friday.
Yeah.
So definitely taking advantage of that and can definitely say that the 3-day weekend every week is pretty
Oh
sweet.
man, I'm so jealous. I think that's great. I would love for that to become more standardized
It
across
needs
the board.
to. There's been so much literature coming out with a lot of like tech companies switching to not just 4-day work weeks, but 32-hour work weeks. And you
Oh
see
yeah.
increased productivity, increased employee satisfaction. Cause like the 40-hour work week, 5 days a week is totally arbitrary. Like there's no rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah. Except for that someone at some point decided that was the thing to do, and that
Mm-hmm.
was the the expectation for people to be putting in that amount of work in a given week. And
Totally.
yeah, mental health is so important.
It's so important.
With with your shorter work week, have you noticed an improvement in terms of like your ability to do things, like whether it's,
Totally.
yeah, so
Yeah.
whether
I
it's your
mean,
work or,
yeah, especially I feel like recharging has been the biggest thing. So like I'm a bit of an overachiever at work, but I feel like unwinding over the weekends was really hard for me.
mhm,
Cuz Saturdays were kind of my one day a week to recharge when I was working my normal work weeks cuz I felt like even before I didn't have the student, I used to stream 2 days after I would work, and not just after working an 8-hour day, but then driving half an hour home, but I felt like my work was not as stressful at that time.
mhm,
And so now, like, I had Saturdays, but we'd spend a quarter of our Saturdays, like, going grocery shopping and running a couple errands, and then Sundays were always such a big stream day for both me and my husband that it's
yeah,
like, well, that's out the window for like, I love streaming, but it's also work in a way. So
yeah,
now having that extra day just to kinda, like, "Oh, okay, I've got one more day to, like, decompress, to just hang out on the couch and play a video game if I want to, or if I need to catch up on some things, I can." I feel like it's done a world of good already for my mental health.
that's, I mean, that like you said, there's been, there's been research coming out, there's been
Mhm.
information stating the benefits of a shorter work week in terms of mental health, productivity, like across the board. It just seems like an overall benefit. So, I'm here for it. I'm here for it if
Mhm.
that becomes a thing. Um, if my boss is listening, it's not that I don't want to work less. It's just I'd
Work
like
smarter, not harder.
I'd like to work smarter, not harder. Exactly. I was gonna say, I was like, but I am saying I want to work. Technically, hour-wise, I do want to work less. So
Yes.
unfortunately, that's what I'm asking for. Uh, so, Kat, it's been so awesome seeing your streams. For those that don't really know much about your channel and your content, how would you describe it to someone brand new?
Oh man. Well, we have kind of a catchphrase that now I've actually like put on bricks. I had it as my custom bricks for Bricks Cascade. So we joke, come for the Lego, stay for the tangents. I'm very much a chatty person. My husband jokes on our first date. Our date lasted 4 hours, and I probably talked for 3 hours and 45 minutes of it. So, so like if we get some Lego building done, great. But that's, I mean, that's I I'm a little bit, I mean, not that old, but I feel like just the kind of vibe, like I tend to have a little bit more chill vibe with like good energy behind it.
Hmm.
So usually it's one of those if you're trying to unwind from the day, but like listen to some funny stories, like things like that. Like I tend to just do the Lego, just stick with, what people want to talk about, what I want to talk about. We do tend to broach some more serious topics every once in a while, but like we keep it respectful. So like because I am a healthcare provider, like we'll talk about the healthcare system. We'll talk about pain control. We'll talk about social inequality, things like that. So we're not afraid to, I welcome that discussion as long as it's respectful, but we also like, what was one of the things we laughed about? Well, I had a fellow stream mate called me a nerd because I build Lego, and that's very on brand for me. So, that's kind of, so yeah, all the tangents like Scotty's saying. So it's usually
Yeah.
like we just kind of have a chill time. We build some Lego, we have some fun. Because it's one of my favorite ways to get to unwind from the week and get to show off some of the cool stuff, whether it's sets I've already gotten, whether it's something Lego has sent me. Like this has been such a hobby that I never expected to be in. And
Yeah.
so like it's become such a big part of me that it's become very fun to get to share that with so many other people. Um, and learn because I am so new as a builder, as a mocker, as all these things that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is cool, but this is so cool too. And these colors and I feel like with being new, I have a bit of a unique perspective that people who've been in the game for 20 years are like, well, that's not how it was when I was around. Like,
Right.
I feel like I came in at such a fantastic time, whereas there's just been this absolute boom of fantastic sets.
Hmm.
Like the very first set I did on stream was Hogwarts, which what a way to start. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
um, so we've done like Hogwarts, we've done the NES, we've done Barracuda Bay, we've been working on the Lambo, we've been working on the piano, but we've also had some fun with like some friends sets, some dot sets, we've done trolls, like so you name it, I've kind of done it.
Yeah.
And that's what I like to like I don't like to shy away from anything. If it's got lots of color, I'm usually pretty on board.
That's excellent. So you've like you said you're a little newer to Lego.
Mhm.
What brought you into it, or what brought you back to it, depending on
Mhm.
your story?
Yeah, so I mean, I enjoyed it as a kiddo. I feel like a lot of people be like, "Oh no, Cat, I can't believe you're saying this," but I actually like played with Connects more as a kid than I did with Lego. Don't throw me out of the community. Uh, in school and at home. And then I have a brother who's 10 years younger than me, and so usually he would get some Lego sets. Um, for his birthday or the holidays, things like that. So we would help him build that. So, but one of the things in our family we loved playing were the Lego video games.
Mm,
Like we loved them. And me and my sister we got to do all the side quests and get all the things. Whereas my brother would just like run through the whole thing and you're already at the end of the level and we're still at the beginning. And finally, when they did the split screen where one person could go and the other couldn't, like that made a world of difference in our family.
yeah.
Um, and that's what I started streaming at was so my husband, we were chatting about this a little bit before the show. My husband's started as a food and drink streamer.
Mhm.
About 6 months after he started streaming, I decided out of the blue, I think I might try this.
Yeah.
And I was planning on being a gaming streamer, and the first game I played was the Lego Harry Potter games on my Xbox. And
That's
then
great.
that was part of it. Like the Hogwarts came out right as I was graduating from PT school. Like I saw it, I was like, Kat, you just got your first adult job. You cannot spend money on this yet. So I saved up a bit and I got peer pressured into buying it while I was streaming. And so I got it. I kind of sat on it for a while and then it was coming up on Harry's birthday and I was like, "Well, this would be a fun stream to like dress up and build Hogwarts." So I have a Gryffindor costume, so I put that on, did the scar, made butterbeer, like
Oh my
made it this
gosh.
whole thing. And then I was like, "Well, maybe I'll do this as a follower goal, but I'll keep plugging away with the gaming." But then I was so drawn. I'm like, "But I wanna keep building the Lego."
Uh-huh.
So,
Uh-huh.
I just kinda decided, I'm like, "Nope, I'm gonna make the switch," and I just decided to start building Lego, and then I was like, "This is a blast," and then I found Brick and Nick on Instagram as I started kind of following, and then I got plugged
Yeah.
in, went to TwitchCon in 2019, so not too long after I had started streaming, and especially not long after I switched. So I met
Right.
Brick and Nick met Set to Build at TwitchCon, and then really kind of dove headfirst into Lego building and haven't really stopped ever since, so
That's such a great story that you just kind of dove right in. You were, like you said, planning to be a game streamer, and then you just kind of fell into it, really.
mhm.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong. That was about three or so years ago.
Yep. Yeah, we're coming up. I think my 3-year stream anniversary is in May, but like July 31st really is the first time I had done a Lego stream. Um, because I think it
Right.
even ended up working out that like one of my normal stream days was even Harry's birthday. So it like I lined up, I planned it all. It was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've been doing this for just shy of 3 years now.
Yeah. In terms of from when you started versus where you are now, what in that those 3 years have do you think changed the most in terms of how you approach your streams and your content?
Oh man. Um Well, lighting has been one of the biggest things. Like with new streamers, you don't need to have fancy cameras. Like get at least some semi decent lighting because my lighting was atrocious starting, but it was the best we like my husband in the kitchen, I would use his laptop and like move one of his big box lights, but I was sitting in the middle of our living room, so it was really challenging. Now with where I'm at in our apartment, because I'm against a wall, I can bounce the light a little better.
Mhm.
Um, I think also too, like, just don't be afraid to tell stories. Like, I felt like for a while I got so into like the building that I'm like, holy crap, I finished the set in half the time than I thought I would. Like, I was building
Yeah.
like 200 pieces an hour or something like that, which I was like,
Wow.
this is
Yeah.
okay, slow it down a little, cool
Yeah.
your jets.
Yeah. There's
Uh,
that comment that common joke about slow builders club on Twitch where there's
oh,
so
yeah.
many of us who take forever.
Yeah, speed has never really been an issue, but unless it's Technic. Technic is my Achilles heel, which I know it's a lot of people's Achilles heel.
Yeah.
Um, but there are sometimes, for a while I was having the instructions up on stream when I had started, there really weren't many people doing that. And I'm
Mhm.
like, and for me, it was nice just because of my building space to have my instructions on my computer. So I'm like, well, I might as well have it for everybody to see.
Mhm.
And now I do it sometimes with like I just did the Elvis mosaic, so I did that so people could see like what the mosaic instructions look like. I've done it with the Technic sets just because they are more complicated, and I have people who are way better at Technic than I am, so they can catch my mistakes when they inevitably happen. But it I think it's also one of those like it takes time. Like don't like it's taken me 3 years now to get like I have 2 monitors, I have a desktop, I have 2 really good lights, I have a good microphone, a good camera, but this has taken almost 3 years to compile all of this.
Right.
My husband's very first food and drink stream was with his phone. Like, we
Yeah.
set his phone on a tripod in our kitchen cabinet, and it was a blast.
Yeah.
Like, so you don't need a ton of fancy stuff, you just need to have a good time and have a good and have an idea even or a passion, and, like, if you're having
Right.
fun, the people watching you are gonna have fun.
I couldn't agree more. I think that I'm glad that you said that where you don't need any of like the great gear, especially now, right? We were talking about
Mhm,
some streamer gear earlier before the show and even like anyone who jumps in, a lot of them are like, "Oh, I need I need the nice ring light or I need a really freaking good webcam or
mhm,
DSLR." And it's like you don't need that, right?
mm-mm. It's been nice to have now that I have some of it, but I would say it's not critical for what I've been doing. It's just but that's the thing is, like, what I am also fortunate that I have a job outside of Twitch, and so luckily
Mhm.
what I tend to make and a little extra, with, what I make on Twitch, I typically either put it into upgrading my stream gear or buying a new set.
Right.
So I'm fortunate in that sense, that I can do that, but I will say that it hasn't been necessary, like, what I've had for almost 2 years, and it has worked very well, and I've found ways to make it work, and it's
Mhm.
only when I've wanted to branch out to start doing, like, a little bit more photography, like, more macro pictures, like, that's when I was like, "Okay, I probably should have a camera that can handle that, while I want a camera that I can also use for stream, so I
Right.
might as well get a 2 for 1 here." Um, so, yeah.
That's a really good point. Um, in terms of like mindset or approach, has your perspective at all changed in the last 3 years from since you started?
I'd say so. I
Yeah.
mean, I think too, it's been a bit of a unique spot with being one of the only women brick builders on Twitch, and it makes me so happy to see more and more of us out there. And I also feel like I'm at a bit of an odd crossroads too, where I am a woman, I am a healthcare professional, and then I'm also relatively new as being out as queer. And just that intersection of everything has been very interesting to navigate. And so
Yeah.
trying to find kind of where I fit in with where I started, with where I want to see the channel going.
Mhm.
I feel like I've always been a very outspoken person ever since I was little. That's never been a problem. Like,
Yeah.
my mom, my high school quote, and it's still one of my favorites. It's the Dr. Seuss quote that what is it? Be who you are and say what you think because those who matter don't mind and those who mind don't matter.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been my mantra ever since I was like little cat.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel like using especially now with being the RLFM, trying to use the platform that I've been given to actually help make some changes and advocate for those changes. So, um, I have been fortunate to have gotten some of the like the Everyone is Awesome and the Queer Eye sets earlier. I was able to have a dialogue with Matt Ashton. I also help contribute for the Tips and Bricks blog on Instagram. So if you see a lot of the diversity and inclusivity posts, I helped do a lot of those, and now I'm overseeing that branch of the page. We've taken on some new members,
Mhm.
and so when you're seeing some of these like global celebration posts talking about like Black History Month, World History Month, International Wheelchair Day. We've got Autism Acceptance Month coming up this month. So that's something I've been working on too. And just really because I'm finding there's people out there who are like, wow, I really resonate with that. And so I think um, there can unfortunately be a lot of toxicity in the Lego community. So to try and find some way to bring some joy and some lightness into it, it felt very attainable because in my role as a healthcare professional, especially the past 2.5 years, like
Mhm.
it's the world has been kind of a bleak place. And so to try and
Yeah.
find a little bit of joy, a little bit of happiness that I can help bring to make the world a little bit lighter, has been really, really rewarding. And even if it's just one person saying, wow, I didn't think about that before, that's a really great point. I'm going to think about that differently next time. Then
Yeah.
that makes my heart really happy.
I'm so glad that you are using kind of your platform, the platform, and your community as a way to kind of push those messages, forward and into the space.
Hmm.
Um, have you found that to be uh, easier, harder, challenging as time has gone on, or have there been any struggles kind of trying to make all that happen in the space?
For sure. I mean, I know at least with my own channel, I think you set the tone for the community that you have. So because my tone and my rules are there, like we're there to have a good time, but we're also there to be respectful of people. Um, I think that at least for my personal community, I very rarely have any issue with that. If a troll does come in, my community almost shuts it down almost immediately because they're like, we don't do that here.
Yeah.
I think on the for the tips and bricks page, I'm usually the go-to respondee because as my husband jokes, I'm a bit of a keyboard warrior, but an eloquent one.
Good.
So I have always been of the mindset if you have to resort to personal attacks, you've lost your argument. So I tend to, with all things I do, try to back things up with literature, with sources, with like substantial substance. That wasn't a good phrasing, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I'm responding, we see a lot of backlash on the tips and bricks page, but part of what I've been doing is reflecting on some of those posts, and we tend to see a common thread with some of the responses. Like Lego is a kid's toy, keep this out of Lego. But
Right.
our challenge to that has been, well, Lego has done now an adults only campaign. It's not just a kid's toy anymore. Like they're actively marketing towards adults. Um, they've actively announced support for the LGBTQIA community by doing the Everyone is Awesome, the Queer Eye Fab. There's a page on their website talking about how they're improving inclusivity and diversity within their workspace.
Yeah.
They've now 2 years in a row done Black History Month features, and again have talked about charities that they're donating to help outreach. So it's one of these, it's kind of a funny place to be in, and it's like, well, so are you telling Lego that they shouldn't be doing these things because we're just kind of following their guidelines.
Right.
So it's I think in that sense it's been easier because you have the big group doing these things already. Be like, well, we're just highlighting what they're already doing and adding our own voice into the conversation.
Yeah,
But it is
exactly.
something that takes, there are some people who are not going to be open to any kind of information. And this isn't just in Lego, this is just in life. Um, but there are those people in the middle ground where it's like, when you're open to learning and you can have a dialogue, opinions should change as you learn new information. I know there have been a lot of things myself that as I've learned more, I've changed my opinion on, and that's how it should be. You should be able to have a respectful dialogue. You should be able to intake new information, think about it critically, and then decide where your viewpoints lie from there.
Right.
Um, so that I think has been the fun part. But again, I'm like a lifelong learner. Like I've always loved being in school. My big goal is to teach others, and we'll be starting that actually soon this fall, teaching my first class in physical therapy, which I'm really excited about. But
Yeah.
so
Exciting.
that I know education has always been one of my strong suits, whether I'm talking to my patients, talking to other people. So it
Yeah.
has been really fun to get to combine that side of me
Mhm.
with what's going on with the Lego world. I've also been really lucky to get plugged into groups like the Women's Brick Initiative, with the Gay Falls group. That there's a lot of advocacy going on there, and that's something I'm very drawn to. But I think it's
Yeah.
also important to have people who do think a little bit differently, because if you have everybody thinking the same, it's just an echo chamber. You need different opinions. You need to talk about different things, even if it's a little uncomfortable, because that's how you grow from it.
Yeah. Agreed. And I'm sure you see that carried over into your content and your streams as you've kind of
Mhm.
touched on already. Um, Do you have any thoughts or advice for those who are creating content and or live streaming on how to uh, tackle that, or how to have those conversations with their community?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, setting those guidelines and having good mods to enforce the guidelines. I don't have a lot of mods, but the mods that I do have are really, really strong. Obviously, one of them is my husband, but as I've mentioned, I have a lot of trusted people in my community, like Nenards here. They're, one of my favorite people in the community, and I still owe them a mosaic. Um, but I think that's also, this is maybe a little bit of a controversial saying, but I don't have the rule no politics, because to me that comes from a place of privilege to not talk
Mm,
about politics that are happening in the world.
yeah,
I'm fortunate as a white woman that I get to bypass a lot of it, but I also know I have people who that's not the case. And so again, I think having my rules are, we don't allow hate speech, but we do allow discussion. And I think
right,
that's the thing, is when you just shut things down from the get-go, it's really hard to talk about things and have, because you might not even realize your community might not be as welcoming as you think it is. And that's not to say it's not a welcoming community, because there are
right,
a lot of them out there, but it's some of those little micro things that, until you talk to other people who are in those community, that they say, well, I kind of shy away from that wording or that language. So again, constantly kind of updating your rules, the vibe of your channel. But I'd
yeah,
also say, if there are things that are important to you, I'd say, as a streamer, don't be afraid to be yourself. You're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and that's
yeah,
okay. But I think when you are authentic and you're having a good time, that's what people wanna see, because people are there, yeah, they're there to watch what you're doing, but they're there to see the person. They like you, they like the community that you're building. So I would say, don't be afraid to be yourself, as cheesy as it sounds. Unless you can be Batman, and then be Batman, which I have been Catman before in a Stardew stream. So, I just got the best of both worlds.
that's that's great. I agree with you, because especially talking about, being yourself and being willing to talk about the things that are important to you and
Mhm.
what you're passionate about. And uh, you know, it's funny that you bring up the whole, no, like, no politics in the chat, right? Because I see that often a lot. And while it, like you said, it may be a controversial thing to say, I do think that if approached a certain way, like you outlined earlier, saying, there's no hate speech here, right?
Mhm.
As an example, as one of the boundaries and guidelines for discussion, I think that as long as you can welcome uh, civil, dialogue,
Mhm.
then it's definitely it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile to have those discussions. So
Absolutely.
I'm
We
glad that.
have one of the people in both of our communities that, as far as we know, are probably opposite on the political spectrums, but they're also one of our favorite people in the world. Like,
Hmm.
and so, because we've been able to have, we haven't just immediately shut things down. And we've done, some prefaces on especially heated days, be like, we're just not going to talk about today in general.
Yeah.
Like when it came close to election time, we were just like, everybody's exhausted. This is going to be a place for escape today.
Hmm.
So it's not, and again, it's not that it comes up often, but I think by just not having that outright, we can talk about some of the things that are going on in the world. Because sometimes we just need to talk about that. And my husband and I are both, we were chatting about this with, mental health and whatnot. We both are the first to admit, neither one of us are mental health professionals. We are a safe space to talk about some things, but we also have our limits. And sometimes that includes stressors that are going on because of politics, because of whatever's happening in the world. And so we want to have the community feel like this is a safe space, that they have some support to talk about things. But we also then
Right.
recognize, say, that might be a little bit beyond our scope. Like, we're here for you as best we can be, but really you should talk to a professional.
Yeah.
So,
How for those that are inexperienced with kind of guiding that conversation, what kind of advice would you give a streamer who is encountering that sort of thing in their chat?
I mean, I think that's partly if you're, either you or your mods just really right off the get-go say, "Hey, this is a supportive place, but that might be a bit too much for what's going on if somebody's just coming in and like trauma dumping."
Right.
That's a little different than just venting about a bad day. And so, I think you just have your mods or yourself like right on, nip it in the bud, kind of say, "Hey, we've got channels in the Discord to talk about more serious stuff. Like maybe let's not do it while I'm live on stream, but or you have resources for mental health." There's a lot of different streamers that I've seen that have like commands to talk about resources for mental health. So that's another good option because that's not why you're going on stream. Is I don't stream to be a therapist. Like if I
Yeah.
can talk a little bit about it and help somebody have a better day, that's one thing, but I'm not licensed. That's not my scope of practice. Like I'm not here to fix somebody's problems. I can try and uplift them and have them have a little bit of a better time, but if
Yeah.
that's beyond my abilities, I want to try and refer them to the person that's gonna help them better than I can, so
Yeah. Yeah,
but
I
it's
think
hard
yeah.
because you get emotionally invested, and it's like, it's hard. I'm such an empath too that, like, I get involved even though I probably shouldn't sometimes, and so
Right.
even for me, that's been a challenge to be like, "No, you need to step back a little bit. That's not your role," like
Yeah. Yeah, I completely empathize with you on that as well. In that I often want to be, you know, supportive and help and listen or offer any kind of comfort that I can to those that need it. And
Mhm.
it's always difficult when when you're trying to stream and hang out with your chat, and then someone comes in and drops a bit of a bomb, right? Where
Mhm.
it was unexpected, it kind of
Yep.
came out of nowhere, and then you're kind of there saying, "Okay, like,
Yep.
how do I navigate this very sensitive situation?"
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that, being able to point to those resources and being very upfront and transparent, saying, "Hey, I'm here for you, but
Mhm.
here's some other places where we can get you the help that you need."
Totally.
Which yeah. So, I think that that's definitely one of the things that, um, a lot of new streamers don't know how to deal with, right? Where
Mhm.
they kind of get to that point where, they've been going for a little while, and then someone comes in and says something where it's just deer in headlights, how do I deal with this sort of thing?
Mhm. And even just trolls in general. My husband is so much better at handling trolls than I am. Like,
Yeah.
I've gotten a lot better because I'm very much that I want everybody to like me, and when somebody doesn't like me, I don't get it, and it
Yeah,
just
yeah.
makes me like, "Well, why don't they like me? I don't understand." Like, I feel like I'm a pretty likable person, like
Yeah.
and so then when you have somebody coming in and, like, criticizing things, whereas my husband, like, he wants people to like him, but he also can let things, like, roll off him way easier, and so I have
Yeah.
figured out a few strategies that he does and just kind of I've had some trolls come in and be like, "Oh, that chick stash of yours is pretty cool," or like stuff, just lame stuff where I should
Yeah.
just have a quick comeback. But it's so hard. Even that had happened like 2 years into streaming where I'm well versed at trolls, but I also feel like because they don't happen so often,
Yeah.
when one does you're like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah.
Like, I should have a witty comeback to this, but I don't because it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Um,
It's tough, right? Having those moments where you have to kind of, pump the brakes a little bit. I mean, I
mhm,
know that I do when, I'm in the middle of a stream, I'm kind of in a rhythm, and then someone comes in and they don't want to they they would rather sow chaos in a not so
yep,
fun way. And
yep,
so it's definitely it's definitely tough. I think it happens to everyone,
mhm,
unfortunately. Um,
Well,
But
that's
yeah,
why I'd say too for even newer streamers, like it, this goes around streamer Twitter every once in a while too, is,
yeah,
yeah, you have your rules, but if there's somebody who you just feel like is throwing off the vibe, like you as the streamer are in control of the stream. And
yeah,
if you're getting a bad vibe from somebody, time them out.
yeah.
Like there's no, you're allowed to do that in your own stream. And I feel like usually my husband and I will be like, if you make us laugh, we'll let you stick around for a little bit.
Yeah,
But if it goes more than that, we're like, "Nope," and we're upfront. We're like, "Okay, you made us laugh or be clever." But
yeah,
like, "Oh, nope, nope, we're not gonna tolerate that today."
yeah.
And you just time them out and chances are they're gonna move on to the next stream. But there's nothing wrong with that. And I feel like sometimes people are just like, "Oh, but any new person, I need to accommodate them." But if you're getting a weird vibe from somebody,
Right. It's usually not worth the energy that
mhm,
they bring to the chat, right?
absolutely.
Often when it's not conducive to the environment that you're trying to kind of nurture,
Mhm.
coming in there with those, those hot takes.
Yep.
But yeah, yeah, definitely. I think often, especially kind of you touched on this with new people, right? With new streamers, um, they often think it's any kind of view is good view, right? And
Mhm.
or any kind of interaction brings up the engagement within the channel or community. But
Mhm.
I think that you're completely right in saying to be okay with timing them out,
Mhm.
or doing what you need to do to continue to uh upkeep the vibe that you're trying to go for, or what's acceptable. As streamers, like, that's on us, right? Like, that's
Mhm.
we drive the community that
Yep.
is our little corner of Twitch.
Totally. And it's hard even especially when it's people like, I've done this once or twice, and I've explained it, like, we've had one time that happened where a fairly regular viewer said something, and it was in regards to, like, pronouns and just kinda making a snarky comment about it, and it was kind of
Mm,
one of those, again, like, how inclusive are you really being? And I timed them out, and we had a good conversation about it, said because I also have not figured out how to delete just a specific message because 'cause I'm that not quite that tech savvy, but
yeah,
it was one of those, like, it happened, and the person was like, "Oh, okay, I totally get that perspective," but for the other people in the chat who were using alternative pronouns, they were like, "I'm really happy that you did this because it shows that you are supportive, like, you're putting the actions behind your words, but you're also not being cruel about it either." And it was one of those, again, I'm all about education, so if we can talk about it and have a discussion, said, "This is why I did what I did."
yeah,
We all wanna have a good time,
yeah,
but it's also one of those just because somebody's a regular too doesn't give them a free pass, so which again, luckily that hardly ever happens, but
yeah.
it has happened, I don't know, 3 times over the past 3 years where I've had to time somebody out, but not ban them, just say, "Hey, just watch what you're saying for a second." And they're like,
Yeah.
"Sorry."
Yeah, and I really think that it's it it's always tough. It's always tough, right? And it's always a judgment call when you're in the middle of doing your stream. You're
Mhm,
building Lego, you're talking to chat, you're looking at three or four different things at once at the very least, and then something happens, and then decision making becomes so much more difficult, right? Like,
it's so hard.
do I time out this person? Do I ban them? Do I
Right.
what do I do in this moment? Um, over time, what have you found to be really useful in terms of helping you make those decisions?
I mean, usually it's just kind of that gut feeling. I've very rarely had to ban anybody. I'm trying to even think. Like, usually a timeout is the first
Mhm.
go, unless it's something like really out of there, like posting a link that you really shouldn't be posting or something, like something outrageous like that. Or if it's very obviously, a bot for, oh, you should go to this and you'll get a bunch of followers. Like those are a
Yeah.
little different. But as far as like, um, again, because it happens so rarely, I would say usually I will give them a verbal warning first. If it's a little borderline, say, "Hey, I wanna have a discussion, but just watch it a little bit."
Yeah.
And then if it goes past that point, then I will say, "I'm gonna time you out for a second because we don't allow XYZ here," or it's broaching that barrier a little bit too much, but I really try to avoid it if I can, if things are still within the realm of discussion.
Right, right, right.
So it's but there have been some people I'm just like, "No, I think you're gonna be a troll here, so."
Yeah. Well, it's certainly something that takes, I think, a little experience
Mhm,
and a little time.
totally.
Yeah.
And again, that's why surrounding yourself as best you can with some good mods, because your mods really should be an extension of you and your channel. And
Right.
obviously, if you mod for multiple channels, it's going to be a little different depending on the channel that you're in. But really, a mod should be an extension of yourself. So that way, if there are things you don't catch, those
Mhm.
people are there to back you up. But
Mhm.
I think too, if you've done a nice job of fostering your community, like I've mentioned, in chat, if anybody says something even slightly odd, my whole community is just like, "What are you doing?" Like,
They're on top
"Get
of it,
out of
right?
here."
Yeah, you
Yeah,
kind of
so
you establish a particular vibe, and I think,
yes.
as that continues to happen and time goes on, your community usually will
It sorts
will
itself out.
yeah, they'll kinda know, right? They'll,
Mhm.
like you said, it sorts itself out. They know what how to respond when
Yes.
something comes across and it's not like anything that normally happens.
Mhm. Totally.
So in terms of streaming and in terms of being a Lego content creator, what do you like what particularly about the Lego space on Twitch uh makes it so unique and interesting to you?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's one of the few places, and I don't know if this is just the more creative side of Twitch, but I think the camaraderie between a lot of different streams is just so cool. Um, we saw this a lot with the food and drink community that because that's where I started with my husband, that whole community is there to build each other up. It's very much the rising tide lifts all ships type of feel.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel like the brick building community has been that, where it's not a like, well, this is my territory, so you can't
Yeah.
come into it. Like I mentioned, I met Brick and Nick on Instagram and found he streamed, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, you're a Lego streamer. Here's the brick building Discord. Here's more people to check
Yeah.
out." And then it just like
Yep.
ballooned from there. And so now, and even now, from when I started Lego streaming, like there were maybe I don't know, about 20 or so of us who streamed regularly, and now
Yeah.
I swear I'm finding somebody new every week, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But I think it's also one of those, like, you can go into any channel and everybody was like, "It's so great to have you here. Welcome on in," and like shout outs galore. And
Mhm.
I think that in general, the creative side of Twitch is so much more uplifting and not like, "Oh, you're stealing my viewers."
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's been such a joy to have been a part, and again, from coming in totally like doe-eyed to, establishing my own community, getting RLFM. I also mod for the brick building Discord as well. So it's been kind of it's surreal, but I also feel like it wouldn't have happened if the community wasn't as supportive as it was. And I think it's been so cool, like I said, to get to meet so many more, to talk about like, yeah, there's this awesome new brick builder, like, and they're on right
Yeah.
now, like, let's go raid them, like, and it's
Yeah.
just you just don't see that in a lot of other communities, and I just think it's so special about this one.
I agree.
Um, like, even the fact like, this type of talk show, like, I feel like you don't see that in a lot of other categories. Like, a couple who are, like, really good friends, but I feel like talking and promoting other streamers within the same category, like, is just kind of, like, not a thing. And the fact that it can exist and be such a cool thing in this category is just, I think, so unique about it.
I agree. I think that the Lego Twitch community is so amazingly supportive.
Mhm.
Because having seen all these different sub sub communities or categories within Twitch, I've never seen collectively such a large group
Mhm.
be so supportive of each other, which is what encouraged me to stay,
Mhm.
honestly. You know, what's fascinating is, like you, my story is somewhat similar in that, Set to Build, Brick and Nick were some of the first streamers that I had discovered, and found that they were incredibly welcoming,
Mhm.
very encouraging. I remember both of them being in my chat one night when I was doing like a one-off Lego build like
Mhm.
years ago before I started doing this regularly, and they were there and they were chatting and being very inclusive about like, hey, you should do this more often because I said something like that. Man, it's like, wow, this is really fun. And they're like, yeah, you should do it more often. I'm like, well, maybe I will,
Right.
and yeah, I'm finding new streamers every week too. And
Mhm.
the fact that it's growing so quickly, uh, I feel like there's this kind of momentum that has
Mhm.
built up, especially in the last 6 months. Like I don't know if you've kind of gotten the same feeling, but
Mhm.
I'm not really sure what's going on in that sense. But
Mhm.
it's pretty fascinating because now if I really wanted to like find a Lego stream, any
It's pretty easy to do now.
yeah.
Whereas before it was like, okay, Tuesday's Nick and
Yeah.
Wednesdays this one, and I do these 2 days, and
Yeah.
now it's like I pop on Twitch at almost any time of day and somebody's doing something,
Yeah.
which is amazing. And I know, like, yeah, I would say definitely within the last 6 months, like, it started a little bit more with COVID, obviously, because people
Mhm.
were staying indoors, and then Lego kinda did a great job with marketing, being like, "Hey, adults, like, you should buy Lego too." And so I think
Yeah.
that was a nice cross section. I started to see more people who typically did gaming, like, doing a little bit of Lego,
Mhm.
but nothing, like, consistent. It was kinda like you said, those one-offs, and then all of a sudden we started probably at least within the last year, if not really the last 6 months, just some people just wow, um,
Yeah.
it's become so very crowded.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot, but I think it's also so super cool because every single stream that I tend to lurk a lot, so chances are if you're on, I'm lurking if I'm not at work, like,
Mhm.
because I have to talk and be on so much during my day, I tend to just be the silent lurker,
Same.
and then occasionally I'll, like, be like, "Hello, I'm here." Um, but it's I get home from work even at, like, almost 8 o'clock at night my time, and there's, 3, 4 streamers on, and I'm like, "This is so cool."
Yeah.
Um, and it's one of those like when Nick and Set to Build started the brick building tag. Originally, it was a little bit more selective, and then obviously it's gotten a bit chaotic, and so that is why they've got it on oh, like the Twitch forum. I'm blanking on the official name of it, but they do have like a thing to try and make the brick building category its own category because and I think it's well deserved at this point within creative. Like there are
Oh,
so
yeah.
many of us, I tend to stream in makers and crafters. Some people do just chatting, some people do art, and I think there's not really one good category to user voice. Thank you. There's not really one good category to capture all of it, and I
Yeah.
think you could justify like I tend to do makers and crafting because I'm making something, but really it's a produced set. So am I really making it if it's not my brain that has come up with the idea? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
It's a
but
gray area.
it is a gray area.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
I think if there, especially with how many people there are now, I think just having a category that encompasses that, I think makes so much sense.
I agree.
Um, so we'll see what happens. So if you haven't gone on user voice and upvoted that, you should,
Yeah.
because I think oh yeah, Slug Biker saying there's 7 streaming on right now, and that's 9 o'clock on the Pacific time, so that's
Yeah.
pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely growing, I think, at a good pace, and like you said, with the size of the community now. and the rate
Mhm.
at which it's growing. I I completely agree with that user voice post that is asking to get a brick building like official category within creative. I've signed it. I have a timer on my bot that normally posts that link,
Mhm.
and it's
Yep.
just, man, I would love to see that. I think generally I can find people off the brick building tag,
Mhm.
but every so often when I'm feeling like maybe there's more out there, I'll go in the search bar and I'm like Lego, and
Mhm.
I'll find someone in just chatting building a Lego set who has
Yep.
no clue that brick building is a tag or something that you could even, put as a part of your stream. And
Totally. Like, I just told, Emmasaurus, who's been on, like, Instagram and YouTube, she's
yeah.
been doing a little bit of Twitch streaming. I'm like, "Yes, you've come over to the dark side." But she was streaming, doing some Lego building, which was amazing, and
Yeah.
I was like, "Hey, just so you know, there's a brick building tab," and she's like, "I don't even know what a tag is because they're
Yeah.
super confusing." And so it's no surprise that
Yeah.
discoverability can be really challenging.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, it's one of those, like, yeah, you can search for Lego, the brick building tag is usually a good call,
Yeah.
but it would be nice because I think there is enough of a community, that I wish Twitch would recognize it, especially because 'cause they've done some partnerships in the past, like, that was also, I think, one of the first streams I saw Brickanick do was when it was Overwatch was doing, like, a partnership with Lego, and so you could get a Lego Bastion skin, and one of the ways that you could get that skin was by watching either Overwatch streamers or Lego streamers, and he was one of the streamers, and I'm like, "So you guys recognize this is a thing, like, Lego Masters has been a thing for a couple years now, like,
Yeah.
there's enough there that I feel like it's like, okay, like, ball's in your court, do something with it."
That's really I didn't know about the Overwatch
It
like
was just 1
partnership.
year.
Yeah. Yeah,
It was
like
really cool.
the sets were cool. I didn't know that they would do that sort of thing. If you watched these channels, you could unlock a skin. That's really
Mhm.
awesome. Yeah, I don't actually know why we're not. I feel like
And they've done, like, Brickanick and Set to Build have done some giant Lego displays for TwitchCon in the past too, which have been
yep.
amazing, like, they've gotten to go to Twitch headquarters. Like, so it's one of these, like, you guys know this is an untapped market, and I know that was part of, like, with the RLFM, they're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, we don't have too many ambassadors on Twitch, like, let's explore this," and I just feel like there's still so much of this that I also think that the world of live streaming is still, like, when you talk to so many people about it, it's such an obscure thing. Like, a lot of
Yeah.
my coworkers know I do Lego stuff, but when I try to talk about, like, "Well, I do live streams." "Well, what's a live stream?" "Well, like, I'm building it." And they're like, "But people just sit and watch you build?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah. Yeah. It's
They do.
yeah. No, I've had to explain that. What's funny is in the game industry where I work, like during my day job, that's where I work. I work in the game industry. Uh, I've had discussions, and this was a couple years ago. It's less like this, but it's still a thing where I've had to sit with executives, and I'm like, yeah, you can, because we pitched a game, and we actually made a very small game that had Twitch integration, but
Oh, okay.
we had to stop and explain that to the executives at certain points. Be like, yeah, it plugs into Twitch, and they're like, oh yeah, Twitch, but what does it do? We're like, okay, so if you're broadcasting live, and they're like, wait, you broadcast it live, and we're like, yes, and they're like, people watch you, and we're like,
Yes.
guys, you're game execs, come on. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things where streaming and live broadcasting, gaming or Lego or everything that you can possibly do on Twitch, that's still a very small subsection,
Mhm.
despite the numbers, right? Like
Right.
the literal millions of people who are live every day streaming
Mhm.
somehow is it's I mean they're not getting YouTube numbers. But
Yeah. But I also think it's such a difference, like, trying to explain,
mm,
and this is one of the things to talk about, like, let's say you have an average of 20 people,
Yeah.
for your stream. Let's say you do a 3-hour stream, your average is 20, which may
Mhm.
not seem like a lot, but you think about like a classroom. You had a classroom of 20 people who wanted to hang out and watch what you had to say for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Like, how many people can say that? And then so I feel like I wish, when I'm looking at stats, like I look at my concurrent viewers, like that's part of it. But the stat that I'm most interested in, and unfortunately Twitch doesn't send it, I think Streamlabs does. And I don't know about Stream Elements, but it tells you the stream watch time. So, like, if I
Yeah.
did a 3-hour stream and people watched me for 2 hours and 15 minutes on average, like, that's a pretty dang good stream.
Yeah.
Like, and that's my statistic. And I feel like that is such a hard thing for people to grasp when they're looking at, like, YouTube, where like, well, they got 100,000 views.
Yeah.
Okay, but what does that actually mean? Like, how long were they engaged with the video? Did they watch the whole video? Like, and I
Right.
don't know how the YouTube algorithm works, whereas I feel like on Twitch, um, yeah, 20 people says Nennard. Yeah, maybe 40 for an average classroom now.
Right.
But it's one of those, like, I think that in real life thing is so, and I know YouTube's trying it, TikTok, Instagram, like there's all these, but Twitch does it best. Like they
They
have the
do.
best live streaming platform, like the emotes, the camaraderie of being able to raid a channel to another channel. Like
Yeah.
you just don't get that other places. It doesn't work. And I
Yeah.
think the fact that you can take a set and break it down live, like we had a troll set I was working on. I think it was the pop treehouse set,
Yeah.
and we were talking about, like, there's a piece in some of the little carriers that they were like, I think that's a new color for that piece, or that's a brand new piece in general. And we looked it up on Bricklink real quick and we were like, sure enough,
Yeah.
like, it was like a I think it was a 2x6 or something with a little extra snot bracket on it. Something
Right.
like that that goes in to hold. And they were like, that's an excellent piece. And so it's like you would know that if you have a YouTube video, but I feel like that's so much harder to compare or relay, it's or convey, there we go, I'm losing my words. So much harder to convey unless it's live, where you can have somebody ask you that question and say, hey, can you tell me a little more about that? And you're like,
Right.
yeah, sure. um and I think it's been such a cool place. Like Kyle just popped in. Hi, Kyle, we've known honestly since my husband started streaming. Like he was one of our very first viewers almost 4 years ago. We've never met him in person, and he's a fantastic friend. And we would not know except for this. Like that's what this platform has done. Like, and I think it's such, like, when we got to finally meet people at TwitchCon, like fingers crossed we get to go to it again this year. But I think it's that in real life, being able to have the dialogue with the streamer, with what they're doing, and especially with Lego being to show things off in real time, show the mechanism, show the
Right.
pieces, show the obnoxious decisions in the instruction books, things like I'd love to have a word with some of them. I'm like, why is this one not have like the 3D view? NES, I'm looking at you.
Oh,
And the Lambo.
I know what you're
Oh,
talking about with NES.
the
There are moments.
Lambo. Oh, I'm like, why did you guys not do the app for this one? But I digress.
Yeah, I think Twitch is still a great platform in terms of broadcasting. I think that YouTube and TikTok and all these other sites that are kind of getting into that space still have a lot to do to
Mhm,
even get on the same level as tools that every Twitch streamer already has, like
mhm.
rating, right? Like rating isn't even a thing. The
Right?
capacity to gift subs or
Mhm,
memberships as they're called on YouTube. It's everything Twitch has done thus far has definitely helped kind of grow this culture of, you know, sharing communities and
mhm,
viewership across different channels and really giving a lot of incentives and tools for those streamers to get people kind of more dug in, right?
mhm.
Whether it's through emotes or badges or hype trains. Like,
Yep.
admittedly, they've really figured out how to monetize, and it still in a lot of ways makes it really fun for the viewers, right? Where
Mhm.
they can trigger a hype train and chaos ensues and everyone's feeling pretty awesome about it. And you don't get that on YouTube. You don't
No.
get moments like that on YouTube. And so
Yeah,
I
we definitely have chaos with the hype trains because on both my channel and my husband's channel, if we reach a level 5 hype train, we've created this terrible game called the Oreo Roulette where we have 3
what?
Oreos and 2 of them have hot sauce in them.
Oh my god.
So if it's my channel that gets the hype train, I have to eat the Oreos. And if it's my husband's channel, so if you get the good Oreo, then the other person has to eat the bad one. So you keep your fingers crossed you aren't eating hot sauce Oreo. Yeah,
That
dinner
sounds
hot sauce
horrible.
Oreos ensue. And I can't remember. It turned out as a chat thing. Like we had Oreos and somehow we had some hot sauce. My husband for a while was doing a lot with like habanero peppers.
Oh my
And they're like,
gosh.
well, what would happen if you put hot sauce in an Oreo? And then somehow we came up with the idea of, well, Oreo roulette. And there definitely been a couple times I've tricked him where made all 3 of them hot sauce Oreos.
That's really good. That's really amazing.
But it's so like, and it's just turned into a thing on our
Yeah,
channel that it's like, okay, that's what we do is we deep fry Oreos, we hot sauce Oreos, like it's just chaos.
that's cool. That's really
Yeah.
that's really cool. I love it.
One of the more random things that's come out from the channels, but we love
Yeah.
it.
I don't have anything incredible to do during hype trains, but now you've have given me some incredible and interesting things to consider, and maybe I don't know if it's gonna be Oreos, but
My
that
husband
is
just loves Oreos, so that's why we picked it. Like that's like one of his favorite things to eat. And so we are like, well, we got Oreos, we got hot sauce, let's combine the 2.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So your husband, you were saying was doing a lot of like food and drink category type streams, and you and I were talking about this before the show, but in terms of like the food and drink category, what was that like? What was some interesting like thoughts about that particular community? Because I don't spend a lot of time on that section of Twitch.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah,
Bring snacks. You'll always be hungry though.
right.
But I feel like we had a really similar experience with the food and drink community as I have tried to do when I find new brick building streamers. So my husband, we started out on YouTube. We started doing a little bit. He was kind of like, no, I want some of that IRL experience. He had been in the food world for, I guess at that point when we started streaming, not quite 10 years, but again, a lot of education was his thing. And so he wanted to be able to educate people like you can make great food even in a crappy apartment kitchen. And so we decided to make the jump to Twitch. He literally started with his cell phone on a tripod in our cabinet. I had chat up on my phone.
hmm
And there was another food and drink streamer that had created a website that showed others. And somehow he found the website, said, hey, these are all the food and drink streamers that are on this website that are live. Reached out to them, Sushi Days their name, and they got chatting a bit. And I think on our second stream, we were streaming, and then all of a sudden, like 70 people came in and said, like, sushi raid. And we were like, what the heck is going on? We had no clue what emotes were. We had no clue what a raid was. We were like,
Of
what is
course.
happening right now?
Yeah.
But that was like the whole tone of the food and drink community is like, again, just I think it's just the creative nature of Twitch was that community. Like I have formed friendships that I know are going to last a really long time. Like when we got to go to TwitchCon,
Yeah.
like I started to know some of the brick building community, but we primarily went because of the food and drink community. My husband and I organized like an unofficial meetup. We did paper plate awards, which was super fun. And there were like 40 of us. And, you know, some of these folks, it's like we've already met because we've been in your streams so many times that we can just skip all the awkward like icebreaker stuff.
Yeah.
And everybody was just like, we hung out with food and drink people the entire weekend we were there in San Diego. And it was so much fun. And it's also been a really cool crossover, I feel like, that we've had, especially with there's a couple of us who do like one person does one thing and the other does another. But especially in our household, with me doing the Lego streams and then my husband doing the food streams, like we've had a little bit of crossover there. So we've had like some food and drink people pop over into the brick building community.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Like we've had, I think Sapiens has rated my husband before because he's like, hey, you're on and making some food. That looks delicious. Let's
Yeah.
go see what you're making. And that's how we all decided. I think it was a fun stream. Jason left, I was in charge, and we'd had some brick builders and some food and drink people, and we decided we needed to adopt a hedgehog named Poggers. It still hasn't happened yet, but one day.
Oh
But that
man.
was, it was just like this rant. I think Sapiens was actually at the forefront of trying to convince us to get a hedgehog. And it's just has been this hilarious, like, but also just such a cool, again, like colliding of two worlds that I feel like Lego and food would not ever really meet. But because my husband and I have obviously this unique household,
Right.
we're able to kind of broaden those circles up a little bit. And then it's like when you introduce this person, then they introduce that person, it circles back this way. And now instead of making things more competitive, it just makes things more awesome.
Yeah.
So in the food and drink community, when I got started with streaming, was obviously a huge support, like, with getting those affiliate numbers. I had a couple really big raids from food and drink people when I was getting started to help boost me up to that affiliate status. Still have a lot of food and drink people hanging out.
Mhm.
One of the stream teams I'm on, the 8-bit community, does a lot of gaming, but there's a lot of people who do, like, one of the founders does food and drink. His wife is a Minecraft partner. I did a Mario Kart tournament with them for charity a couple
That's
weekends
cool.
ago. So it's one of those, like, I've been able to branch out. But a lot of that, even though they're a gaming team, kind of, there's still a lot of that same camaraderie in that community as, I've been seeing in the food and drink community and the
Mhm.
brick building community too.
It's really cool to hear about all the crossover, given your
Yeah, it's
your
been really
history.
neat.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of that, like, on a somewhat more general sense with, like, generally, like, 3D printing.
Mhm.
I see a lot of that community overlaps with Lego and brick
Mhm.
building, which is pretty incredible. And then, there's a few people in, like, the smithing, like, the blacksmithing
Mhm.
community who have started to kinda cross over. Lone Mountain Knife Co. is one of those streamers. He actually did a Lego stream not too long ago
Oh,
where
very
where
cool.
he was, doing a lot of, smithing, and then, he found my channel and then found a bunch of other Lego streamers, and, during his birthday, he's like, "I'm gonna build Lego." And so I'm like, "Yeah, do it, let's go.
That's
Let's
awesome.
build Lego." Uh, I think it's cool to kind of see the blending of these
Mhm.
different communities, whether it's the more traditional gaming categories or just seeing other people within the creative space who are adjacent to the brick
Mhm.
building tag, um,
Totally.
rather above the brick building tag. So that's very, very cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, we've seen that a little bit with the blacksmithing and the food and drink too. Like at one point in time for one of the charity streams, we didn't get it off the ground, but there was a streamer who did like chef's knives, and so the thought was to try and pass it around to a lot of different food and drink streamers, have them use it, sign
Oh,
it,
that's
and then
cool.
auction it off for charity. So, but then COVID hit, so we weren't. I think everybody's lives obviously got thrown upside down. But
Yeah.
yeah, we've
As
seen a little bit of that crossover in that category too, which is, a little bit of woodworking, some of the smithing, resin work too. So that's the crafting team that I admin for. Has like I'm the lone brick builder, but help with some of the other admins, like getting Lego sets for their partners and just spreading the word of Lego basically to anybody and everybody.
Mm. With so many different people that you've seen in the space or met or have been connected to, um, do you have any of those connections that really inspire you to kind of do your thing on your own channel?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Brick and Nick is probably the biggest one because he was one of the first people that got me into things. I think just how easily, but how consistently he's able to do mock work. Like I'm hoping one day that I will have a room where I can do more mock building. I really do love set building though, and I feel like that's taken for granted by a lot of
Mhm.
Lego builders, like especially in the AFOL community. Like if you don't do mocks, what are you doing? Sets are amazing. Like, some of the
Yeah.
most creative people in the world are set designers. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
I learned so much from each of the sets that I work on. He's also been a really, really great friend. So I think he's, you know, just kind of that hype person if you need somebody to be hyping up what you're doing.
Yeah.
I also, like, have gotten to know on Sundays, we do the brick relay, so kind of that gaggle of folks. So we've got, Brick and Nick, Cranky Bricks, Set to Build, Brickanista, and myself. It was actually really cool at Bricks Cascade in Portland a couple weekends ago. We had 4 out of the 5 of us, but
Oh,
I
that's
brought a
so
Brick
cool.
and Nick brick, so he was there in spirit. But it's just one of those, again, like, Brick and Nick and Set to Build have kind of been there from the start, and it's also hard to think of myself now as kind of like a veteran brick builder when I'm like, "Oh yeah, I have been here around a while, haven't I?" But it's also like Brick Anissa and I have a collaboration that we want to try and do for BrickCon with the Women's Brick Initiative, and I've talked a lot with Cranky Bricks. Like, she just got a feature for women builders, and so I think um, that group of people has been super inspiring, and just like, they're just doing a lot of really great stuff, and it's a cool thing to be a part of. But I really, there's so many people. Like, I also, the charity drive that just happened was so insanely cool.
Yeah.
For Ukraine, like, that was kind of spontaneous, and it happened and raised a bunch of money. And I just think you don't really see that happen in a lot of, and I know it's not the first time that the brick building community has done something like that.
Yeah.
I think also Tricky Bricks too is another channel. I just adore Flynn and Richard, and I've been very fortunate to have met them at Bricks Cascade, and now has become really good friends with both of them. And fingers crossed, hoping to go to Scareback Fan Weekend this year, because they're displaying a piece at the Lego house. So
Oh,
I'm
that's
just like,
so
one
cool.
day I want, but that was like how I got my introduction with them. Was I was talking to them at Bricks Cascade, and they had posted a video about kind of breaking down simple movements, kind of in inspiration of their big cuckoo clock that they did on Lego Masters.
Mm,
They were like, yeah, you do a simple motion, and then you tie it to another simple motion, and then all of a sudden you've got this really complex thing. And I was like, that makes so much sense, because as somebody who's brand new to all of this, trying
yeah.
to finagle how the heck to do something like that, I have no idea. Um, but there's so many people out there, but they're also just such wonderful people. They were mad that my husband didn't come to much at the convention. They were like, "Where is he?"
Yeah.
But I'm still trying to get my husband a little bit more. He liked Lego when he was younger, but now I'm like, "I bought you this set." And he's like, "But did you buy it for me, or did you buy it for you?" And
Yeah.
then I just have to say yes.
Yes, I did.
Yes.
That's that's so great. There are a ton of great people in this community, and you named a lot of great names there, and I'm sure many more will crop up as time
Mhm,
goes on. Uh, I certainly take a lot of inspiration from a lot of those same people. So,
mhm.
um, well, that with that said, what's next for your channel, for your community, the content that you want to generate? What's in the future for Dr. Cat?
Yeah. Um, so my husband and I have been talking about it a little bit, and I'm thinking about backing down my hours just a smidge from work, because I do feel like I've had a lot of momentum with my channel and a lot of things that I've been doing, and I, at least while I can, want to capitalize on it, not necessarily monetarily, but just like, I want to do something with it. And I feel like
Right.
I've got the means to do it. Like I mentioned, I really want to try and cross what I do as a healthcare worker with Lego.
Yeah.
Super excited to see them talking about like the MRI scanner models. I've actually brought in some Lego sets for some of my occupational therapy coworkers to bring into patients. And I'd love, like, there's not a lot of research out there specifically with Lego,
Hmm.
but I'd love to, like, it makes sense with some of the other literature that's out there, but I would love to be able to do something with them, whether it's, not even just for kids. Like, I'm thinking of some of our stroke patients working on fine motor tasks. You could even
Right.
work balance. We were talking excuse me, putting up like big base plates on a wall and having people like grab a Lego and then stick it to the wall. And you're working on reaching, you're working on balance, you're working on color, you're working on coordination.
Right.
So stuff like that is one thing. The other area that I'm kind of starting to dip my toe in, I don't know if you can kind of see this thing behind me. This is the start of it. I've started doing a little bit with some resin. So this is like a color swatch of don't pay attention to the black one. It kind of escaped from me a little bit, but I actually officially have a business license for DrKatBuilds and Crafts, and the thought is to maybe try and sell some Lego resin jewelry in the future. Not just jewelry, Lego resin combination things at conventions. So that will be coming up down the pipeline. Got to play a little bit more with it, but I've done some test stuff and I've been really happy with how it's turned out. Huge fan of the dots line, and I feel like there's so many great shapes and colors, and there really aren't very many people using. There are people making like Lego jewelry, and there's people making resin, but there's not a whole lot that combine the two.
Yeah.
I think you can do some really cool stuff with that you couldn't do like just normally sequencing things together.
Right.
So that is also kind of a little business venture that I'm exploring.
That's really cool.
Yeah, because my husband's like, you've been our primary supporter for the past, 4 or 5 years. And so now it's your turn to have a little bit of fun. And, I love being a physical therapist, but, working in a hospital during COVID has been really, really rough. And this is
Yeah.
something I want to kind of explore a little bit more. And I still want to be a physical therapist. I love what I do. I love what I get to do. But I think this is kind of the time to explore and figure out some new hobbies, some new passions.
That's very
So
cool.
yeah. So, and then as far as the channel, I think for me, honestly, just having a more consistent schedule again is my biggest goal.
Yeah.
Cause I'm like, so I haven't streamed for a month. But now that I think I don't have a student, I'm gotten used to my normal work schedule. I really would like to get back to streaming 2 days a week again if I can, but
Hmm.
at the very least being more regular with my streams that I'm doing.
Of course.
Because I've got too much of a backlog. It's a good problem to have. Like I've been playing a little bit more with some TikToks and things like that,
Yeah.
which has been kind of cool to do a couple of, like the smaller sets that aren't necessarily a full stream on Twitch. Um,
Yeah.
so I have been having some fun with TikTok because it is a little bit more easy to manage than YouTube is with all the editing and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm there on TikTok if you throw me a follow.
Yeah. I've
But
been.
I think it's just finding that work-life balance a little bit better is my big overarching goal because I've just been feeling so overwhelmed these past 2 years that it's want to try
Right.
and rein things in a little bit more.
Balance is always good. Balance is always
Yes.
good. What would you have told yourself when you were first getting started on this whole Twitch streaming journey with Lego?
Oh my goodness. That is an excellent question. Get a better laptop. No, because the laptop I had at first, like, I remember Stream died on me because I didn't realize the battery cable had like
Oh
barely moved, and
no.
then
Yeah.
like I think I ended up getting like a 300-person raid that day too. Like,
Oh
and luckily I got
man.
everything figured out. Like,
That's
but it
rough
happened.
though.
Oh no, but honestly, I think it's just one of those like I think it's just keep that joy alive, like, the joy and the fun of building sets, and, like, I still have that, but I do feel like the anxiety of, like, are people gonna tune in today? Like, do I have the energy
Yeah.
today? Like, that imposter syndrome, like,
Yeah.
don't let it get to you so bad because I feel like when I first started, it wasn't that big of a deal, but,
Hmm.
like, I feel like there is a lot of pressure with being a streamer that's been around for a while, being an RLFM, there's a lot extra that goes on there. But,
Right.
kind of like I said at the start of the stream, if you're having fun, that's what matters.
Hmm.
And so I think that's the part I'd say just keep that part in the back of your mind. Like,
Right.
don't let that anxiety get to you so bad.
Right.
Because it does, and it's hard. And I
Mm.
feel like that's something that people don't talk about all the time, like the
Yeah.
burnout, the anxiety, the imposter syndrome, like, it happens to the best of us,
Yeah.
and that's okay, it's normal, and just do what you can to try and help overcome it.
Mhm.
Figure out ways to relax, to de-stress. If you need to take a little time off, take the time off. Because the couple times that I've like taken a dedicated break, I come back way more recharged and I'm a way better streamer than I would have been if I'd have just powered through it.
Right. That's some good advice. With the imposter syndrome piece of it, how does that affect you these days? Out of
Oh,
curiosity.
all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
I get the nerves every time before I hit going live
Right.
now. But then it's one of those, like, my husband always tells me too, he's like, "You have so much fun once you get going." I'm like, "I know, but it's still so hard."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, totally feel the same way.
I think honestly, like, streaming a little bit earlier in the day has kind of helped. So before I used to stream at like 7:30 at night.
Yeah.
But that was when I was first starting. And then when I made the move to Sundays, like I was streaming later. But now I kinda feel like if I'm streaming at, like, 11:30, I just don't have enough time in the day to get those nerves going, where it's just like, I wake up, I get my coffee, I get ready,
There's
"Okay,
no
I'm
time.
streaming." Yeah, there's no time to be nervous, whereas, like, if I wake up and then I, like, go grocery shopping with my husband and then he's streaming first, and then I'm like, "Okay, am I really gonna stream today? Like, why did I do this?" And
Yeah.
so I feel like just going a little bit earlier, I can't go in that doom spiral of like, "What's going on
Yeah.
today?"
That's,
So
that's really that's actually a really good point. Never thought about it that way, but you're kinda right. I think for some of us, the more time we have to think about it, the more easy it is to kinda start to worry or get
mhm.
anxious about those different, things that make you kinda hesitate.
Yep, yep.
That was,
So
that um, was there anything that you were expecting me to ask you that I didn't ask or that you were anticipating to talk about that we didn't touch on?
I can't think of anything, like, I feel like I talked about at the beginning, one of the big things of at least my community is just trying to find an inclusive, keep things as diverse as I can, but still have a chill time. Um, that's just kind of my personality in a way. Like
Yeah.
I'm an extroverted introvert. Um, so so I feel like for me, like I like having that chill energy to unwind, but I also, like I mentioned, a lot of the advocacy stuff is really important to me. So that's kind of some of the other directions I want the channel to head is to be a little bit more of a voice, be a little bit of a on the forefront of some of those discussions to try and spark some change within the Lego community, the Lego group as a whole, things like that. So that's kind of what it all boils down to. But I can't think of anything specific that we haven't touched on. So
Well, then I've done my job. That's excellent. So now that you've sat with me and you've had an opportunity to have this kind of discussion, uh, who would you like to see go through this exact sort of thing next, or sometime in the near
ooh.
future?
I mean, I feel like since we talked about them so much, I'd honestly say like set to build or brick and Nick.
Hmm.
Um, I know brick and Nick is a little MIA still.
Yep.
And I'm trying to think when set to build because we got to see them because he's doing a West Coast trip.
Yeah.
But the other person I actually think would be really awesome is Brickanista. She
Yeah.
and we were joking 2 years ago at Bricks Cascade. We like met but didn't really meet, and we found a picture of us from the Women's Brick Initiative session. We're actually like two people away from each other. I think we had Amy from Lego Masters in between the two of us in the group picture.
Wow.
And then she was on YouTube, and I actually was chatting with her a bunch and was inspiring her to get on Twitch. And so then we were gonna meet at BrickCon last October, but she couldn't make it. So we
Yeah.
finally got to meet at Bricks Cascade in Portland, and we were like, "Oh my gosh, we've like known each other for 2 years, and now we're finally meeting." And we were just chuckling about the picture that we were literally 3 feet away from each other.
That's
Um,
really cool.
and she is such a sweetheart. I think it's so cool with she's got the Brickanista Broadcast Network. She started the Daily Brick Limit on Instagram, was kind of one of her brainchild. So if you've seen that
Yeah.
hashtag,
I've seen it.
that's yeah, that's she was one of the ones to start that, and just some of her builds are so stinking creative.
Yeah.
I've seen a few, like, she's done some really fun stuff with pandas and ships, and like I said, we were gonna do it for BrickCon, but our hope is to do like an aquarium collaboration build for BrickCon,
Yeah.
with the Women's Brick Initiative, since Seattle, has a lot of aquatic life to it. So, but yeah, she would also be another really awesome person because she's so fun.
Yeah. Yeah, she has an incredible talent for mocking,
Hmm.
and just is just you can feel like the love for Lego when you watch her mock.
It's
That's
so,
been
and she just goes for it, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, I'm like, I feel like I'm an overthinker, if you couldn't gather that
Yeah.
already. And so that's why I prefer doing stuff in like studio, and then like I have
Yeah.
things and it can look perfect, and I do it that way, and I do mosaics because it's really like I know what it's gonna look like when it's done. And she's just like, I'm just gonna put these cool things together. And like, yeah, she had like 2 different pirate ships and like a
Yeah.
mini model in a ramen shop and like all sorts of cool things at Bricks Cascade. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
That's
this
so
is
cool.
neat. Like,
Yeah.
so I would love to see you, and especially because she has a history too in the like outside of Lego in the entertainment broadcasting industry. So she has also another one where it's kind of those cool things where she's taken some of what she's been doing outside of Lego and been able to incorporate it with what she's doing in the Lego sphere. So those would probably be the people I'd recommend, but I'm also a little biased with the brick relay, so
Well, it's a great list. It's a great
it is a
list.
great list.
Yeah, I mean, they're all already on it, but that 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 validates and gives
Yes,
gives me more stronger confidence that those are good choices.
there you go.
So, Kat, where can people find you on the internet?
I mean, I'm pretty much Dr. Cat builds everywhere. Um, I think except for maybe Flickr, but I don't really do anything on Flickr. So
There you
I
go.
have a little bit there, but yeah, Dr. Cat. Um, yeah, Dr. Cat builds. It's the same on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter, YouTube. I do a little bit with YouTube. Really, Twitter and TikTok are the 2 places I'm trying to grow right now. So we hit, I think, 200 followers on TikTok, and we crossed the 600 follower mark on Twitter. We're a little over 1100 on Instagram, which for not posting all that consistently is pretty cool. I'll tell you guys too, my pop filter, I actually made that myself because
Oh,
I enjoy crocheting. So you might have seen me. I did a big Lego logo crochet blanket that I've had like 100 people ask if they can buy
that's so cool. Are you going to do more things like that to bring
Yeah,
to
I hope
cons?
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they'll let me, for sure. Because my great grandpa used to crochet, and I got back into it with the pandemic. So he taught me when I was just a little tater tot, as my
That's
husband
so
would
cool.
say. And
That's great.
so, yeah, doubles is a nice little representation, and also as a little bit of a pop filter for my mic. So, got inspired by the Proud Owl, who's the founder of the crafting team that I'm on. He's done some little mic beanies, and so I was like, I'm gonna try that myself.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah, I guess Dr. Cat Crafts is my only other alt account on Instagram if you like crafty things. But pretty much Dr. Cat builds everywhere.
Everywhere.
That's me. That's me.
Do you have a schedule up for Twitch? I know you're trying to get into one.
Yeah, I mean, usually Sundays are the most reliable days that I'm
Okay.
on Twitch. If you're in my Discord, I'll post about it there, but typically Sundays are the most reliable day. I've been branching out into maybe doing some Mondays because I do have Mondays off. It just depends on if my husband and I both stream. Usually I produce and moderate for him, so it is a little bit exhausting doing both of those streams on the same day.
Right.
But typically Sunday is kind of early afternoon because I like to try and get our East Coast folks in if I can. Brick relay days, I'm usually at about like 6 o'clock, so a little later in the day. Um, but yeah, Sundays, usually my Twitter and my Discord are my two most reliable places to figure out if I'm streaming. I
Great.
think I was trying to decide if I was going to stream tomorrow after being on here tonight, and I haven't decided yet.
Yeah.
But I think we might do some. I was just debating about continuing the grand piano, which is right here, versus I've got the Bone Demon Monkey Kid set that
Oh.
has been sitting on my shelf that Lego sent me, and I'm like, I really need to build this because it's
Oh
beautiful.
yeah.
So I might do that.
I've been meaning to pick that one up. So
Yeah.
I'm
It's glow in the
excited.
dark, so I'm like, I'm a fan of glow in the dark,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. I really want that one. That's like super high on the list, but I totally just got the DeLorean. So
Oh, that's a good. See, I feel like, and that's something I do on my channel that like I'm not a channel that's like, I gotta be first to do everything. Like, I feel like it's actually kind of fun letting things sit for a bit and
yeah.
then coming back to them later, be like, hey, you remember this thing that came out a little while ago? Let's build it. And
Yeah.
then people are like, I was debating that, and now I'm gonna get it.
Yeah. No, that's
Um,
great.
Especially because you can wait for like double VIP points or something, or a good gift with purchase. Like, I'm very much like, I like doing some stuff day one. Like, NES was definitely a day one purchase for me. But a lot of those other ones, I'm like, what gift can I get with this one?
Yeah.
Or going down like to Portland, it was double VIP points weekend and no sales tax. So that was a pretty sweet shopping spree that I did.
Oregon's great for that.
Yep. Ended up picking up the corner boutique, the hotel, the
The
new
hotel, yeah,
modular, which
yeah.
is my second modular I've ever purchased. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for it.
I actually picked that one up like a month ago, and it's in a box ready to build. Like I haven't touched it yet because of the famous Lego backlog that I have.
Oh
But
yeah. No, I've got a whole
yeah.
Metro shelf on the other side of my computers that my husband got me for Christmas, and that still doesn't even capture all the sets. Like
Yep.
it's so bad.
I hear that. Same. I'm in the same boat. Kat, it has been just so much fun talking to you today. Do you have any parting words for those that are listening, either live or on the VOD or on any of the other places they'll maybe consume this?
Sure. I just want to say a huge thank you for having me here on the show. This has been an absolute blast. And it's just, again, makes me so happy to see the community that the brick building community has on Twitch, to see all this camaraderie, to see lifting one another up. So thank you for doing this series. It's been awesome to get to listen to get to, learn more about some fellow brick builders. So just keep doing what you're doing. And thank you again so much for having me on here.
Well, thank you for being here. It was great. So many good pieces of discussion here. I'm so glad that you were able to make it, and thank you for joining me on this show.
Of course.